Hi, so we're starting off this vlog with a trip to this new cafe that I've been obsessed with. It is a tea place that recently opened up in Seattle. They serve all sorts of specialty matchas as well as a ton of different boba options. I tend to do this thing where I become fixated on one cafe and I'm like all in on it, and that's this place for me right now. The drink I ordered is just called the matcha matcha. It's basically matcha with matcha cold foam, and it is so good, like one of the best matchas that I've had in a long time. And during this writing session, I was working on kind of the in-between like brainstorming and outlining for my new plot direction with my dystopian fantasy project, which we're going to be chatting all about in this vlog. So that's what this session was dedicated to. Completely obsessed with this place. The ambiance is also incredible. Let's get into the rest of the vlog. We are currently working on re-plotting my entire dystopian fantasy duology. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Brielle. If you've not been up to date with the updates lately, you might be like, what the heck is going on? To say that things have been happening would be an understatement. Yeah, it's been an experience, to say the least. Definitely check out my last writing update video. It was 40 minutes of me basically chatting through everything that's happening with my book, why I'm essentially redrafting in draft 3. It was a really fun time. But basically for the last week or two, I've been working on replotting this book. I did a in-depth chapter by chapter outline that literally included like paragraphs for some chapters of what exactly is going to happen in that scene. This is by far the most direction that I've ever had going into a drafting process, which I am really excited about. And now the time is coming to approach book 2. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a bit nervous about this one. I definitely have a lot less figured out going into trying to outline book 2 than I did going into the outline for book 1. By the time that I was putting down the outline for book 1 on paper for this, redraft, I already kind of knew 99% of the answers because I had spent so much time brainstorming, talking about it with my friends, and I kind of knew exactly what needed to happen. So the outlining process was more about getting clarity than anything. I was coming up with some new things, yes, especially towards the climax of the book, but it wasn't like I was really starting from scratch. I already kind of knew a lot of what needed to be in that new outline, even if a lot of it was changed from previous iterations of the book. That's not the case with book 2. Also, as cute as this setup is, it is incredibly uncomfortable. I'm wondering if I could do more of like a tilt down so I could just sit. Let's commit to that so that I don't need to kneel this whole time. So book 2 is a little bit more mysterious. And yesterday and the day before, I think, I spent some time in the book 2 document that I had. If you've been on the channel for a while, you would know that back in November, this past November, I decided that in order to participate in NaNoWriMo or the monthly writing challenge, whatever we were calling it, I wanted to put a pause on book 1 and attempt to kind of explore book 2 a little bit. I basically drafted 35,000 words in book 2, and I kind of knew this at the time. I feel like even in my nano reflection video, I mentioned that I didn't think it was quite there in terms of actual plot progression, and going back to it, it was both negatively and positively surprising. I mean, on the positive side, I was pretty happy with seeing decent line level drafting. That was definitely like a win. But on the negative side, there was no plot in what I wrote for book 2, like very little plot. The entire first half of the book was like majority vibes. Yes, there was stuff happening in a character relationship sense. I feel like that's clearly what I was focused on, but there is very little plot progression. There are entire scenes that definitely did not need to be there and were just there for vibes very clearly. It's just weird to look back on that and be like, oh, this is not at all what this needs to be. We are coming off of, especially with the changes being made to book 1, we are coming off of a very high stress situation. We have an antagonist who is breathing down our neck and very much still an active threat, and yet our characters are hanging out like nobody's business. As I was reading it, it really was, if you've read the ACOTAR series, it was my A Court of Frost and Starlight moment where I feel like I just wanted to see my characters in these situations, and so I plugged them in and I watched them hang out. Like, that's literally what it was. It was very self-indulgent. It kind of felt like I was reading fan fiction of my own novel. And there's also a very weird dissonance where it kind of felt like a different book. Like, I feel like maybe my character voices weren't quite as solid yet when I drafted it. Sort of my characters felt like themselves, but there was also a lot of ways in which they didn't feel like themselves, and it kind of felt like I had forgotten who they were a tiny bit. I don't know, it just felt very forced. It didn't feel like a natural reflection of an evolution of book one, and that's what really stuck out to me about it, as well as just the fact that there was very little plot and very little structure and a lack of a sense of forward momentum or us actually moving and working towards something, which is very concerning for a second book in a duology. We should feel like things are amping up. The big conflict is looming, and it didn't feel that way, which is strange, especially given that the conflict that was going to be the core of book two was originally even huger. So I had no excuse for things to be feeling so low stakes and leisurely. So book two, bit of a mess, if we're being so frank. It's a bit of a mess. There are a handful of scenes from book two that I think still have legs, that I think deserve my consideration, at least when it comes to plotting and planning for the book, but a lot of it is going to be pretty much scrapped, which I kind of knew, but it still stings a little bit to really be confronted with that. In terms of where to go with book two, I'm a little stumped, if I'm being honest. I just don't know. The book one outline feels really solid, even if it is a bit overwhelming at the moment, but book two is a bit mysterious to me. So instead of wallowing in that feeling, I'm gonna try to figure out what I can do to remedy that, change that. Here's what I'm thinking. The first thing that I think I really need to do is I think I need to sit with this new outline for book one more. I wrote it and then I let it sit there. I have this detailed chapter by chapter outline. I have an entire bullet point list of everything that's changing from an overarching story perspective, and I haven't really reviewed it. I've written it, but I haven't really reviewed it. And I think maybe part of the reason why I'm having a really hard time at the moment wrapping my brain around what needs to go down in book two, and also just I'm struggling to zoom out. Despite being in an outlining stage, I'm still struggling to zoom out and view the whole duology as a whole. I think it's because I haven't sat with or spent enough time looking at this new plot direction and how it actually is materializing. And so I want to spend some time just reviewing what I worked on for book one, and also creating a consolidated version, a one-page, very simple, high-level outline, because all I have at the moment is this very detailed outline, which is great. That's going to be incredibly helpful when I go to draft scenes, but it's not giving me that super zoomed out picture. So I want to make a very zoomed out outline of just what's happening on a plot level, sequence of events level. I think part of what's hurting my brain is there's stuff that's happening that we don't find out about yet. And so trying to balance what's happening in the background with what's happening on the page, it's still a bit overwhelming at the moment. So I think that's what we're going to do first, is kind of recap and review what we've actually worked on for the first book in terms of outlining, and then attempt to outline book two, really aiming to make it a continuation of and natural evolution of the new plot of book one. I think the more solid I feel about book one, the easier it'll be to approach book two. And maybe part of the reason why I'm so overwhelmed and confused by book two at the moment is because I still don't quite grasp what has been changed in the first book as fully as I could. I think I have a pretty good idea of a couple main plot beats for book two, but I want to fill in at least a little bit of the in-between before I dive really into revision of book one, because I don't want to get myself into more traps of making changes, doing things, doing the work, only to then find out that I've dug myself in a hole elsewhere in the narrative. And so I want to be as solid as I possibly can about the full duology. I also really need to make a written down breakdown of the magic system. So that's also on the to-do list as far as plotting, brainstorming goes. We're gonna get to work. I think I'm gonna go down to the park. I think it'll actually be cooler outside than it is in here, since I'm on the 5th floor of my apartment complex. And I'm gonna take myself to the park and do a little writing session out there. I think the goal for this writing session is just going to be combing through what I have so far for book one and attempting to make a more consolidated book one outline, which will probably take way longer than I think it will. I think it's 75, 76 degrees, so it should be gorgeous out. So
bring me back to that day.
we are very warm, and we have been working out here for a couple hours. We've been vibing. I did 2 30-minute sprints, and I've just been reviewing all my notes in my like bullet point notes list, and I'm starting to feel much more grounded in this version of the story. Things feel like they really click together like little puzzle pieces, which is very exciting. The intimidation that I was feeling before getting into this session has really dissipated, and now I'm just feeling ready to keep moving, honestly. Anyway, we're gonna go back to the apartment, but I'm feeling really, really good, and I love having a Friday just dedicated to working on this. So fun. Should we do a fun little AuthorTube haul? AuthorTube related items? I can't believe I can do this. It's so cool having friends starting to release stuff. Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to give some love to my friends. Firstly, this cup. Can we talk about it? I'm obsessed. This is my friend Anna's merch. Anna New, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with her. She is an icon within the AuthorTube space. She made some cute little writer merchandise, and this little cup is one of the items in her collection, and she sent it to me, which is so sweet. Thank you, Anna. And I'm obsessed with it. It kind of has this like little almost sticker-esque look where it has these little decals on it, and it says the perfect beverage to accompany my novel on it. I think it's so cute. I'll have it linked down below if you want to match with me. Obviously, I'm going to be drinking many matchas in this. Another exciting thing, I'm late to showing you guys this, but I had to wait for Amazon to deliver it to me, but I got a copy of The Ghostwriters Club by Cody Wayne Morris. And while I was on the writing retreat, he signed it for me. If you don't know Cody, his channel name is Cody the Writer. I actually binge read the first half of the book on the plane ride back from the writing retreat, and I've been so impressed so far. This book feels so cohesive. It's very obvious to me that Cody has a good grasp of his writer voice, and I also love just like the college setting. There's something about it that's so comforting to me, even though this is like a thriller and obviously crazy things are happening. It also has that just like comforting feel to it that I love in a book. I'm just really enjoying it so far, and I've been really, really impressed. So great job, Cody, and I can't wait to binge the second half of the book. So I'll have this link down below as well. You can get it on Amazon, and I think it's also available on KU. That's all for this segment. I just wanted to take a second to shout out my friends. Check out the stuff, link down below, and I can't wait to continue seeing more and more of my AuthorTube friends releasing things, whether that's books, merch. It just makes me so happy and excited. The fact that I'm starting to have a book collection on my bookshelf of things written by my friends is just unreal, and honestly not something that I ever could have foreseen. If you took me back in time a couple years ago and were like, yeah, you and all your friends are going to be publishing books in a few years and like releasing things, I'd be like, what? It is many hours later. We have a Brazilian iced latte. This is like one of my special occasion drinks. It is so freaking good. I did not get it decaf though for some godforsaken reason, so I'll probably be regretting that soon enough. We fully have the golden hour light going. You know, people really trash on north facing windows, but I kind of love that I get direct sunlight in the evening. It's just so beautiful during sunset, and I'm never awake for sunrise, so I think I'd rather get the pretty light in the evening. Anyway, we've been working for well over 3 hours at this point. I'm having such a good time. It's honestly rare that I get to lock in for such an extended period of time, and so I'm just feeling really grateful to have the time and flexibility to work on this so much today. It's going very well. I am finally experiencing what it must be like to be a plotter. And y'all, it feels incredible. I've been working on multiple things in the last few hours. I actually feel like I got a lot done. In the park earlier, I was mainly focused on just reading through my bullet point notes of the overarching story changes. Once I finished that, I did my magic system work that I wanted to do. So I decided on 5 different abilities that are going to exist in this world. And I also did a breakdown of the base ability, like what an amateur could do, advanced things that are possible with the ability, and then the dark magic / assisted magic version of the ability, aka what you could do with it if you were pushing the bounds a little bit and breaking some laws of nature. Part of how my magic system works is that you kind of have like a bit of a magic tank, so to speak. And so if you're trying to perform magic that goes beyond what you have the capacity for at any given moment, you have to pull from other people. And so that's kind of like what the assisted / dark magic is. It's the two different terms is kind of like depends who you ask kind of thing. Like the people who think that doing this type of magic is messed up would call it dark magic, but the people who think it's just like no big deal would call it assisted magic because you're using other people's magic to help you. Anyway, tangent. So I did this breakdown of basically the base magic versus the advanced magic versus the dark magic versions of each ability, and I named all the abilities and I'm feeling really solid about it. I love the more clear-cut simplicity / clarity that's coming from having the defined abilities. I think especially for more of a beginner world builder and someone who hasn't really made a magic system before, it was definitely the right move to just keep it a little simpler and go with abilities that I've kind of seen or heard of before. Nothing revolutionary. There's still like little pockets of the abilities that I think are, you know, a little interesting and things that I already kind of had in the story that I'm now just giving names to or figuring out where it fits in so that it makes sense. So I did that little magic system work, and then since then I've been working on my consolidated outline, which I believe I mentioned earlier that I wanted to take my very fleshed out, very convoluted outline and create a version of it that was much simpler. We're talking 1 to 2 sentences per chapter, high level. I've been doing that and I'm loving it. I've never felt so organized and in control. It's amazing. It's really helping me achieve what I feel like I was missing before, which was that majorly zoomed out look. I'm organizing it by POV. I have a different highlight color for each POV. And then I'm also including the save the cat beats that each chapter is fulfilling and which character it's fulfilling it for. Because like, for example, my characters have a different inciting incident. Like Varen's is actually quite a bit higher than Rhea's, I realized. So yeah, it's been really interesting. I'm definitely seeing a reminder that Varen is a little bit lacking in POV chapters in Act 1 specifically. And I still haven't quite remedied that. I have a feeling there's just like one chapter maybe that's missing for him. And I have some ideas for what it could be. I think it would be something akin to either setup or debate or a little bit of both maybe. I have some ideas for what that could be, but I think that might be the type of thing that when I'm in there and I start writing his POV, I'll realize what we're missing in terms of his setup. I don't feel like not knowing what that potential extra POV chapter is changing anything because he still is ending up at the same place at the end of the act. It's more a matter of what do we want to see of his regular life, what would be insightful. And maybe this is a thing that beta readers will clue me in on too. Like, hey, I would love to see this part of Varen's life. Like, I don't feel like I quite grasp this part of the world or of his upbringing, whatever. And then we can dial in on that. But yeah, it's going really well. I truly do feel like a plotter. I feel insanely organized. I feel like put together. It's exciting. And I'm glad that I just kind of naturally started incorporating the save the cat beats into how I'm looking at it. It feels like I'm like one of those memes with like the insane board on my wall and I'm like tying things together with string, doing this sort of plotting work and just like sitting with the plot as its own thing really does make me feel like a little mastermind, and it's so fun. And I don't know why I always kind of avoided this kind of work. I feel like I just felt so unequipped for it before and so incapable of it before, and now I'm really learning like the more like analytical part of my brain and the part of my brain that likes problem solving and putting pieces together is really liking this kind of work, and I'm learning that I am capable of doing it. And in fact, it actually seems like a pretty good fit for my nature because like in school and stuff, like I was good at things like math. And I'm not just saying plotting is math, but I do feel like it uses a similar part of your brain that's like logical, strategic part of your brain. And I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying that type of work. So am I officially converted from a pantser to a plotter? I would honestly say yes. You know, I think it was pretty obvious from my last writing update, but I do feel like the whole experience of working on my first book has really solidified to me the value of plotting. I think when it comes to the book 2 outline, I'm just going to try to do the consolidated outline version. We're talking 1 to 2 sentences per chapter or per beat, like this more high level zoom out version. I think that that's going to be a lot less intimidating to try and hammer out rather than the super detailed in the weeds outline that I did to fully flesh out the first book. So I'm thinking once I finish the consolidated outline of book 1, I might just try to roll right into book 2 and see how that feels. I want to keep going. I think I'm going to write for at least another hour. My goal for this month in TRACKBEAR is time-based. I'm trying to write for 50 hours in the month of June. And I decided to go with the time-based goal because, especially in these stages of the process, you know, tracking word count, tracking chapters, I just felt like I wouldn't be able to recognize all of my progress when I'm doing something like this that's a little bit more zoomed out if I was focusing on something like word count and chapters. And honestly, I think the fact that word count was the metric that I was first introduced to when it came to tracking writing progress may have had something to do with me putting drafting and actually getting words down on a bit of a pedestal and kind of avoiding some of this softer, harder to recognize or harder to track work. And so I think a time goal for this month was the best thing I could have done. And honestly, I think time goals are some of the best writing goals you can set. Like in certain stages of the process, something like a word count goal might work, but time goals you can do no matter where you're at in your writing process. And I think that that's really powerful and special. I think I have a lot more time goals in my future. Like, for example, when I look in TRACKBEAR now, I can see that I've spent over 100 hours on draft 3. And that's a really cool stat that affirms to me that I'm working on the draft, even when it feels like the progress is stagnant. And so I guess I say all that to say, if you haven't tried out time-based goals, I really recommend it, especially if you're in a stage of the process where it's a little less clean cut to track. But the thing is, like, even if I was drafting, I think a time-based goal would be great because if I had to take a day to pause and like replot, for example, in the middle of drafting, I wouldn't see that as a day where no progress was logged if I was tracking time. But if I was just tracking word count, I might look at that stat and be like, oh, didn't get any words that day, even if the work that I did was more productive than just getting words down. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like my approach to goal setting as a writer and also just what encompasses a good writing day has changed. It's not so much about just getting words down anymore. It's not so much about the word count. It's more about showing up, the consistency of showing up and making meaningful progress that I feel like is actually improving the story. And all the progress I've made today really feels that way. Even though it's not like I'm changing a ton today or like discovering or deciding a ton, at least not so far, the solidifying, the wrapping my brain around things is so valuable. It's like, I think you need to have things straight in your head. Like that is so important. So I feel like that's also a big part of what I'm doing right now is getting this material in my brain so that I can inform all of the drafting that I'm about to do. I'm actually getting so excited to write this book, like so excited. I can't wait to like actually get in there. I don't know. I'm so excited. It's so interesting because I think when I was taking more of a pantser approach, I had this mindset that if I knew what was going to happen, drafting would no longer be fun or exciting. And now that I know what's going to happen, I couldn't feel more different from that mindset. In fact, I feel more excited than I ever did when I didn't know what was happening to draft these scenes. And I think it's because, and I think I heard Alyssa say something similar to this recently. In fact, I'm going to try to quote kind of what she said, if I can remember it. She basically was like, when your subconscious is not preoccupied with what needs to happen in the scene, it allows you to actually enjoy the process of discovering how it's going to play out and how it's going to materialize. And I think that's the kicker. And this is true with so many different creative things. Like we think that restriction will, suffocate us, but in actuality, restriction breeds creativity. When you have a framework, your creativity can fill in the blanks without feeling overwhelmed because you have that framework. And I think that's what I've really learned about plot structure and about plotting is that it's actually freeing you creatively because then you can have a clear goal going into the scene, going into the chapter so that your subconscious isn't freaking out and trying to piece that together. And that actually allows you to enjoy and sink more into other aspects of the scene because there's so much going on in a scene beyond just what's happening on a plot level. And so I actually think because I know what's going on a plot level, this will free me up to be able to really play with things like character dynamics, subtext, things that I can incorporate in the interiority, leaving breadcrumbs, foreshadowing, how I can work in exposition subtly. Because I know so much, I feel like I'll be able to play with all of those things in a much more sophisticated manner versus just focusing on like getting us through a scene and having things occur. You know what I mean? Like that really was the pantser way for me, was just like, I just needed to figure out what was happening next. And so much of my brain space was preoccupied with figuring out what was happening next. And now I don't have to think about that, which is awesome. So yeah, I think I'm going to get back to working on the consolidation of the book one outline. And I think I'll check in with you guys probably tomorrow. That's all for this update. I really need to drink this latte before it gets too much later because it's almost 9 p.m., 8:30, which like I know that the sun sets late in the summer, but it still shocks me every time. Like, how is this 8:30 right now? This lighting right here, this is 8:30. My ISO is at 100 at 8:30. If you know, you know. You know what? I'm actually thinking we got quite a ton of footage today, and I might just cut this vlog off here and have it be like a one-day vlog. My goal for June is to post twice a week, so I'm going to be trying to create a lot of content this month. So I'm going to be doing a ton of vlogging and cranking out a ton of vlogs. So you'll be seeing a lot more writing updates soon. But if you made it to the end of this vlog, leave me a sun emoji down in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you very soon with more writing updates, but things are looking good, guys. We're fixing this. We're fixing this book. All right. Love you. Bye.